Welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us in today's webinar. My name is Aditi and I head the marketing at Tattvik Analytics. To give you a brief introduction, Tattvik is an authorized Google partner for reselling Google Analytics 360 license and is also one of the leading providers of digital analytics solutions and consulting for Google Analytics for large enterprises as well as SMEs. Today, this webinar is on getting started with BigQuery, and it shall be presented by Pankaj and Sarjak, who are customer success managers of Tattvik and work regularly with BigQuery. So just a few things before we get started. If you have any questions during the presentation, please type them into the question box in your GoToWebinar control panel. I will bring them up at the end of the presentation and we will be sure to answer as many questions as time permits. Now, I will be carrying out a couple of polls during the webinar that will help us to know you guys better and keep this session interactive. And you guys should also feel free to raise your hands and put in any questions that you might have. Also, today we have something truly innovative and something really awesome that we are going to share for the very first time right here in this webinar with all of you towards the end of the session. So do stay tuned to find out what it is. Also, just giving a heads up, this innovation and surprise that I'm talking about is going to be truly beneficial for all our Google Analytics standard users, especially. Okay, so like I said, before we get started, I would like to run a quick poll so that I can understand you guys better and it will help us to determine what GA do you currently use. So even if you are a standard user and you do not require GA 360, we will cover your requirements and your problems with unsampled data later on. We run this poll for 10 more seconds and we will then move on to our session. Okay, people are still answering, so let's just give them 5 more seconds. All right. Wow, so the poll, I'm just going to share the poll results with you all. We have 84% of people who use GA360, while 11% do not use GA360 and are on standard. All right, awesome. So I see a lot of attendees from our previous webinar, and a big shout out to you guys for joining us again. Thank you so much. We have a great audience here today, Pankaj. So without any further ado, I'm going to turn this session over to you and Sarjak.
Hey, thanks, Aditi. Thanks for the warm introduction. Hi guys. Hello, everyone. It's good to have audience from different business domains, and I'm looking to have a wonderful and a very interactive session today. Hope you guys find this useful. This will get you started using BigQuery if you're not, and we will just walk you through the BigQuery UI and the use cases. So the major outline, if I have to talk about for today's session, we will discuss about BigQuery, what is it, and how it is able to perform petabyte scales of data, and all, along with the architecture on which the whole BigQuery is based on. We'll also talk about Google Analytics 360 data that is exported into BigQuery, because I believe like 84% people are already using GA Premium account. So this would be the major focus for today's session. After that, we will also talk about integrations of BigQuery with other tools, the BI tools or the programming languages used for predictions and machine learning, along with the sample use cases, I mean the business use cases again. We'll end the session with one or two hands-on exercises, so that will give you an idea to start doing the analysis. So moving ahead. So in today's world, when the number of internet users are growing multifold, the data that we are collecting, be it like website or mobile, has grown multifold. It has grown exponentially, and querying these massive data sets for any analysis is time consuming. And second, it is expensive as well if we don't have right hardware or right infrastructure in place. Google BigQuery is solving this problem by enabling super fast SQL-like queries using the processing power of Google's infrastructure. So Google has like more than 100,000 plus data servers, and it is allowing us from via BigQuery to use this infrastructure as a service to process the massive data sets that we have. At the same time, the access control is again pretty much efficient. We can control access to both the projects and the datasets. We will cover projects and datasets and how the BigQuery structures the data, but it allows us to give access to different business teams depending on their needs, so that the isolation of data is also maintained. The queries which are used, or the language which is used for running the analysis, is more or less similar to SQL-like queries, which is again like is based on the Dremel architecture, which we will soon talk about when it comes to discussing the architecture. So in and all, BigQuery it's a powerful big data analytics platform. It is being used by all types of organizations, from startups to Fortune 500 companies. We can import other data sources as well, be it CRM data or other analytics data points into BigQuery, to have a single master view of all the data points that we have about user journeys. So moving next, when it comes to scales, this is like a real power of BigQuery, and it scales into petabytes of data. It can scan terabytes of data into seconds and petabytes of data into minutes. We can load data, be it from the Google Cloud Storage, or otherwise we can stream data also into BigQuery. The streaming rate which is allowed is 100,000 rows per second per table, which is pretty useful if you're running a very large-scale websites or mobile application, or otherwise if we are having any streaming application where we need to store the data tick by tick. So that is where it is pretty handy. For running analysis, we can always connect it to R or Python pandas or Hadoop or Dataflow for further analysis for machine learning. The connectivity of the data exchange is pretty easy and efficient. In terms of security, it allows us to have row-level security along with data expiration, which makes controlling access again more efficient. So let's have a look at the way it is architectured. I mean, like how it is able to handle so much of huge data, or big data to call it. So yeah, so talking about the architecture, I mean, like BigQuery, like many other tools, started with a problem. Google engineers were having a hard time keeping up with the growth of their data. The number of Gmail users in 2012 was like around hundreds of millions users were there. And there were more than 100 billions of Google searches happening every month. So trying to make sense of all this data was a time-consuming and frustrating experience for the people. So this data problem led to the development of an internal tool called Dremel, which enabled Google employees to run extremely fast SQL queries on large data sets. So the way data was stored, again, like they started using taking advantage of parallel processing architecture. The data was stored into multiple disks, and queries were run simultaneously or parallelly, to be precise, on the different data sets. In 2012, at one of Google I/O event, Google publicly launched BigQuery, which allowed users outside of Google to take advantage of the power and performance of Dremel. Since then, BigQuery has expanded to become not just a query engine, but a hosted, managed, cloud-based structured storage provider. The way it stores the data, so it uses column I/O storage for storing the data. So column I/O is primary file format used to store the data into BigQuery. How it is different from the traditional record-oriented structures is, in traditional databases, data is laid out on disk in order to ensure access is as fast as possible for typical workloads. The column I/O data format is laid out to ensure fast access for Dremel workloads. Databases like MySQL can skip rows it doesn't need, where Dremel takes an alternative approach. It can avoid reading columns it doesn't need. So traditional databases store data into row order. So that is like they store all the fields in first row, then all the fields in second row, and so on. whereas column IO stores the data into column order. And each column gets its own file. So that file will again be like stored into different disks. And because the data is stored into different disks, so processing this data parallelly becomes much easier. So that is how BigQuery is able to achieve the speed with which it is querying the huge data sets it is at the moment. Then this query is just processed by thousands of servers, as we mentioned, because the columns are stored into different file formats, which are like spread out again into n number of servers which Google has across the world. Backups of those disks are already in place. The processing is also happening at the same time. If I have to talk about the way data in BigQuery is structured, so it again uses the same format as mentioned on the screen. It stores data into data sets which will have multiple tables, and tables again which will have rows and columns. So in and all, BigQuery, it's publicly available implementation of Dremel, and as we said, it is available as infrastructure as a service. So I hope this gave you an idea about the way it is being architectured, or how it is able to store and process the huge data sets. So let's have a look at Google Analytics 360 data into BigQuery. So as we know, for Google Analytics 360 accounts, we can link it to a BigQuery and start having access to raw hit level data. So if I talk about the process of linking data, linking GA360 data to BigQuery, the step one, again, BigQuery is part of as Google Cloud project. So the first process is we create a Google Cloud Platform project. We enable billing account by providing credit card. Then we go to Google Analytics property settings. We give the BigQuery project ID, which already we have created in step one. The one point to note down here is in a property, we can connect only one view to BigQuery. So it is always better to have, or to connect raw unfiltered view which we have in Google Analytics to BigQuery, so that we have access to all the data that we are getting inside Google Analytics. So once the linking is done, we start getting data into BigQuery, and we can like start querying it the moment it arrives in BigQuery.
And yeah. So one of the key things that I've been asked by a lot of clients is that when on step 3, let's say if I link BigQuery to GA360 property, and if I am bringing one of the views data in my BigQuery account, how long does it take? How long does it take for that particular data to be visualized and to be available in BigQuery to query the data, right? So how it happens is that whenever you link that particular view, as good as 13 months of backdated data from your GA360 property is going to flow into the BigQuery account that you've created. And addition to that, it might take about 24 to 48 hours for the first set of data to flow in. And ideally, it takes about a couple of weeks for the entire data if you have actually 13 months of backdated data in your account. And yeah, once that data is already there, you can then query the Google Analytics data like Pankaj was mentioning.
Thanks a lot, Sarjak. So moving ahead, so once we connect the Google Analytics 360 account to BigQuery, and we start getting data inside BigQuery. So the way the data is structured is we have one GCP, which is Google Cloud Platform project in BigQuery, in which we will have different data sets. So one GCP project will have multiple data sets. One data set will have multiple tables. So each view being Google Analytics view, will have one data set in BigQuery, and that data set we have multiple tables. So what Google does is, for everyday data, it will create one separate table with a prefix GA_sessions_ and the date. So for everyday data, it will create a new table and it will put under one of the data set. So in the screenshot, you can see under the project, I have multiple data sets, and under the multiple data sets, again, like I have different tables. Reason like we are looking at different numbers is because it is date partition tables. So we will have a look at what date partition is, and when we move ahead to the hands-on exercise. So if I talk about the data structure for the way data of Google Analytics 360 data particularly is stored into BigQuery, as it is again like stored into tree structure. So we will have a record for each session, and then there will be nested and repeated fields for some dimensions and hits. So hits will be my one record, and under which I'll have different fields. So if I want to access hit number or hit type, I'll have to type hits.hit number or hits.hit type and so on. The complete BigQuery export schema is available on the link which is available on the screen. We will also take you back to the schema during the hands-on exercise, so that whenever we write any query or anything, and if we need any information about the field names, we can always refer to the export schema which is available publicly. Few pointers about the way data is stored into BigQuery for Google Analytics again. So the field full visitor ID, it represents unique visitor ID. So it is again, so in Google Analytics, like we have the client ID, which is the cookie ID, which is created whenever user lands on my website or mobile application. So this client ID is hashed and is stored in the field full visitor ID. So there is one-to-one mapping between each individual user with full visitor ID, which is available in BigQuery. The visit ID is aligned with how GA is generating the sessions. So the combination of full visitor ID and visit ID will give me a unique session ID to identify in the scope of overall GA data that I'm collecting in one particular data set. For custom dimensions and metrics, again, scope matters as we have in Google Analytics. So the different, so the way if I have to access scope, user scope or session scope custom dimensions, the field name is custom dimensions. So it would be like custom dimensions.index or custom dimensions.value. For hit and product scope, again the fields are different, like hits.custom dimensions, and for product scope it is hits.product.custom dimensions.
So basically, the different custom dimensions have different scopes in BigQuery. So whenever you're one key thing to note here is that whenever you are querying a certain data set from BigQuery, make sure that you have checked your Google Analytics account and you have verified that this particular dimension, let's say dimension number 8, is a dimension of hit scope, or is it product scope, or is it session or user level scope. So likewise, whatever be the scope, you can select the similar field from the BigQuery schema.
And the last non direct attribution model which we have in Google Analytics, yes, it is applied in BigQuery data as well. So for the BigQuery export, we get access to raw hit level data in BigQuery along with the session information and user information. The individual level customer data. So if I want to understand the complete user journey for a user, like what all clicks or what all pages he or she has been visiting at what time again. So that is available in BigQuery, which gives us an opportunity to perform statistical analysis as well for predictions and machine learnings. It also gives us ability to tie in other data sources. So other data sources being, for example, like CRM data or any other data sources that we have. So just to deep dive into integrations and use cases, I'm handing this to Sarjak. So if you can take it us with integrations and use cases, please.
Yeah, sure. So basically, looking at the integrations for all the different tools that you can integrate BigQuery with, Google, so like the Google Cloud partners came up with a lot of different integration possibilities. So how the things are integrated is that they provide open APIs by Google Cloud Storage, and there is an open API available for BigQuery as well, right? So from data integration to analytics, Google Cloud partners have integrated their industry-leading tools like Google Analytics 360 Suite. Then there are other third-party tools like Tableau, Informatica, SnapLogic, ClickView that you can integrate with BigQuery for loading, transforming, and visualizing data, and to have your different statistical analysis at your ease. So there might be certain tools that your organization is equipped with and they are comfortable with. So you can use any of these integration tools, and there are others as well. This is just to name a few of them, but there are a lot more possibilities out there using the BigQuery API. Now, moving on to the sample use cases, some of the use cases that you might be interested in. So these are just a very few of the multiple use cases that we have been working for many of our clients. So the first and foremost thing that we find very interesting is that you can get unsampled custom funnels. So all those 360 users and all those users out there might be aware of what custom funnels are, right? So you can get unsampled custom funnels with a lot of added benefits. So basically there is no backfilling when you are creating a funnel using BigQuery. Then you can have historical information. Let's say you're creating a funnel using your Google Analytics account. You have the liberty to have the data starting to flow only after that particular funnel has been created in Google Analytics. But for this particular scenario, like when you're accessing your funnel using BigQuery, you have the historical data as well, as long as you have it in your BigQuery database, right? And then you can also apply filters. You can have filtered and segmented funnels out there. One of the key limitations that I've been hearing from a lot of our clients, and we also, when we analyze our own data, we get to know that there are only there's a limitation of only 5 steps for any custom funnel. So there are limited steps, as many as you want them, and as long as you can write a lot, like n number of lines of queries, you can have unlimited steps for accessing that particular custom funnel. Moving on to the next one, let's say I want to understand for a particular given landing page, what all were the interactions or what all were the last clicks that the user performed on the previous page, so as to understand that there might be a lot of CTAs on one of my pages, and which of these CTAs is actually moving my users from one page to another. I can understand that using a very simple query in BigQuery. Then what I can do is that if I want to understand the sessions having transactions, and I want to understand the user behavior amongst those transactions, you can identify the events which were performed. Let's say I want to understand that if a user performed a search in a particular session and then transacted, if a user clicked on a particular what you call internal promotion and then completed a transaction. You can also get funnels starting after a particular event that have been performed within those user sessions. Yeah, so that's what you have, and there are n number of use cases that your businesses can think of, and you can write those SQL queries to get this similar data. Moving on to the next thing, Pankaj can take us through the hands-on exercise and show you how, and maybe get comfortable with BigQuery UI.
Thank you. Thanks a lot, Sarjak. Let's get started with the web UI that we have for BigQuery and start writing queries. So I have this one of the testing account where like I have connected some properties, Google Analytics properties to BigQuery. So just to give you a quick walkthrough of the BigQuery web UI, or web UI meaning like web user interface that we have. So this is my project ID. There are these different data sets representing different Google Analytics views, inside which I have a group of tables. So for daily data, I have the table GA_sessions_. So what this 1189 is, it is representing that there is a data of 1189 days. So this is how it looks like. So to start with, in the table details, like I have in schema tab, I can see like what all fields are available in the table along with their data types. In the details field, I can also understand how many number of rows are there in the table, along with the table size, when it was created, when it was last modified, and if we have set any expiration time for that particular table. So let's jump into writing a query. I click on compose query button to have a query. So let's write some simple query to get us some idea about how we can explore the data available into BigQuery. So I have this query handy with me. What it is doing, so as I mentioned, like it is more or less similar to how we write SQL queries. So so the field like I select the fields that I want to have access to from the table date range. So because the tables are date partitioned, so if I want to access data from multiple tables, so I can use table date range. So here what I'm doing is I'm accessing data from 1st November to 10th November. I'll be grouping it by date, and order by date is again like because I want to see the number of users, sessions, page views by date. So I write the query, I format the query if there are any syntactical errors by mistake, if there are any, and then I click on run query. So it will also show me like when the query is running, and after the query is run, like how much time it has taken for accessing the complete data set. So I have the results handy with me, like by date I have the numbers for user sessions, page views and all. I can download this result as CSV or JSON format, or I can also save it to Google Spreadsheets, or otherwise I can also save it as a table for future use if I want to go ahead with. The results are also can be like as I mentioned, like can also be seen as JSON format, just in case if you want to export it to some other application which is accepting JSON format data for further analysis. Yeah, over to you, Aditi.
Thanks, Pankaj. Sarjak, that was an amazing session, and the hands-on exercise was pretty cool. I hope you guys found it really useful. If you have any questions, please feel free to type it up. Okay, so we've been talking about BigQuery throughout this session, which, as we all know, is actually useful for GA360 users. Like promised at the beginning, we are now going to talk about how we can bring a solution to Google Analytics standard users. So while BigQuery is not accessible to our standard users, we at Tatvik have come up with a solution addressing just that. All right, so the solution is called Spider. To give you a brief introduction, it is the product of our annual hackathon, and like I said, this webinar is the very first place, and you guys are the very first group of people that are hearing about this from us. Spider gives real-time hit-level unsampled data to the Google Analytics standard users. Now, if you are a company which has a larger hit volume and you're also a standard user, you know exactly what a boon this solution could be for you. You can unlock actionable insights, derive trends, optimize your campaigns, and also carry out sentiment analysis once you access this data. Now, it looks like we have a few questions, and we are now opening the session for the Q&A. So, Sarjak, and Pankaj are going to take up a few questions from you guys. The first question is from Lars. He is asking whether there are any common scripts in using R for BigQuery. Maybe we know some helpful resources that we could send across to him.
Thanks for the question, Lars. So to answer that, we definitely have a lot of common scripts using R for BigQuery. We have our in-house team working on R that fetches data for regular basis for analysis that we do using R itself. And there are a lot of helpful resources that we can suggest. Maybe I can give the list of those useful links to Aditi, and she can share those particular links as part of the handouts after the webinar is over. Yeah, sure.
Absolutely, I will. Lars, I will be sure to send it across to you, all the resourceful links. Also, his second question, Lars's second question is, do you have a SQL template where you build a funnel?
Yep, I actually have that very handy, and you can write to either Aditi or you can send it to hello@tatvik.com, and I can understand the requirement that you have for these funnels, and have the template shared with you and show you how this particular query works and explain as well. Sure.
All right, so our second question is from Vishal. He's asking if it is possible to perform cohort analysis using BigQuery.
So cohort analysis is something that we have already cracked, and there are a lot of other queries and articles out there that we used as a starting point, and to suit to our customers' requirements, we've been analyzing a lot of cohort data using BigQuery. And because cohort data in Google Analytics is a bit limited, if you guys know well, right? So we definitely have cohort analysis that you can perform using BigQuery as well.
Okay, so the next question is from Harsh. He's asking, how do I integrate third-party data and query using BigQuery?
Okay, yeah. So when you are mentioning about the third-party data, I assume it's about the offline data or your CRM data that you might have, or you might have certain transactional data from your offline stores, and that's pretty much possible. That's something we are also going to cover in the upcoming webinar of the version 2 that Aditi will speak about later during the session. And we can upload those particular data points from either CSV files or your cloud storage or your spreadsheets, and then have joins applied on these two data sets to join those data points and integrate them with the data in BigQuery itself.
All right, thanks, Sardak. Next question is from Nishank. He's asking if BigQuery is compatible with Adobe Analytics, and if so, could you please share some of the use cases?
To read with the same thing that Pankaj started with, BigQuery basically there is a possibility to implement GA360 data. However, it's not just limited to that. Google BigQuery is a querying engine, and it's out there for a larger audience as well. There can be if I understand it correctly, Adobe also provides the APIs to download that data and to have all the data sets downloaded from Adobe. So there's no direct integration as such as of now, but you can always download the data from your Adobe Analytics your portal, and you can upload them. Like I was mentioning, you can upload the entire set of database, because I understand if you are running Adobe Analytics, you also have a lot of data points, and you also have a huge set of users coming in on a daily basis. It gets really difficult to understand and to run statistical analysis on those data points. You can bring them onto BigQuery database, and you can have tables in BigQuery database to help you support to support your statistical analysis. Some of the use cases, maybe I can think of some and get back to you in a couple of days. But yeah, at the top of my mind, I do not have any handy use cases, but definitely we can get back to you on that.
All right. So our next question is from Mohit Preet. He is asking how accurate and reliable is hit level data in BigQuery. He has seen some discrepancies in BigQuery results and GA360. So if you could please throw some light.
Sure. Thanks, Mohit, for the question. It's a really great question, and we've been hearing this from a lot of our clients, and what we have done for them is that there might be certain one or the other issues either with the BigQuery or the way you are getting the data out of your Google Analytics reports. And what we have done for them is that we have always optimized the queries, and there might be certain scenarios. So to answer the first part of the query, it is actually accurate and reliable because it is actually the raw level data. It might be the case of sampling which you have in GA360, because even if there is GA360, sampling is going to be there. It's the solution of unsampled reports that you have handy. So in BigQuery, since the data is always unsampled and there is no sampling in BigQuery, that's when the discrepancies might occur. But I can definitely, I'll be more than happy to look into those discrepancies if you have any, and you can just feel free to write to us with the exact discrepancies that you're seeing, and we can definitely resolve them for you.
I hope that answers your question, Mohitpreet. Do feel free to write to us in case of any further inquiries that you might have. Okay, so our next question is from Tom. He's asking, well, just like you mentioned, we have hit level data in BigQuery and JSON can be exported. Can he link BigQuery to a tool directly, such as spreadsheet, or can we get the data directly in Excel? Because he seems to think that it'll make the reporting and analysis much easier for his team.
There is one particular tool even by Google that they give the Excel plugin, and you can download those Excel plugin. It's a publicly available Excel plugin. You can have it downloaded, and you can connect with your BigQuery account, and you can query all the data that you have access for. That's pretty much possible there.
All right. Cool. I hope that answers your question. We are going to move on to the next question. I'm sorry for taking it up really fast, but we're running out of time. This question is from Hitendra. He's asking if some events are created via data layer and some by generic tag, will BigQuery record both the type of events against a single full visitor ID?
So that's pretty much going to be the case. However, you are sending the data to Google Analytics, does not matter what reaches to BigQuery. Even if you are using data layers or you are using your on-page implementation or any generic tag for that matter using GTM, the data when it reaches to Google Analytics is the exact same thing that will be recorded against the same full visitor ID. Yeah, so that pretty much makes sense to have the same. The couple of events against the same ID. I have been seeing multiple questions on what's the plugin name, the one that I was referring to. You can just search for BigQuery connector for Excel, and there's an export link that will pop up. The first link that pops up for export, that's the one that you can use. It's a pretty self-explanatory tutorial as well. Aditi can you can also put it in.
Yeah. I will put the link to this Excel plugin in the handouts that I send across. So All right. Moitpreet has one more question. He's asking, does the full visitor ID get created every time the same user clears the cookie?
It does. It does. So basically, the full visitor ID, like I was mentioning, as per the schema, the schema that Pankaj was showing, it's exactly the same mapping of your client IDs in Google Analytics. So the data does not get created differently in BigQuery than Google Analytics. Is the exact same parent server that sends data to Google Analytics and BigQuery simultaneously, and both the tools in their own way shows you the data points, right? So if there are like 10 users, and if you understand that there are two different, when I clear my cookies and I am a new user to Google Analytics front end as well, it's going to be the same case for your BigQuery data as well.
All right. We do have a few more questions, but since we are running out of time, what we are going to do is, guys, Sarjak, Pankaj, and myself, we will get in touch with you personally over the next couple of days and answer all your queries personally over an email. Rest assured, none of your questions will go unanswered. Our next webinar is on advanced BigQuery, where the speakers are going to be the same, Sarjak and Pankaj, and they're going to cover advanced concepts and working with queries. It was really great having you as an audience. Thank you so much for joining us for today's webinar. Thank you so much. You guys were a great audience, and we look forward to seeing you again on the 30th of November, same time. Thank you so much.